So welcome everyone to another session of Write Club. And in this particular week, we are focusing on all the steps you need to get your book published. So it's 21 days to get published. As I was just sharing of getting published, you actually only need 10 OGs, original gangstas, or we were actually calling them original game changers, in order to get to the bestseller level, the bestseller status. Because if you have 10 people who have been with you from the beginning, they know your voice, they know what you want to portray, they know what your premise and your promise is for your book, what your book cover looks like. They know everything about your book, that they become raving fans. And those 10 people tell their 10 people. And so on and so on. Like someone said, there was a Fabergé organic commercial back in the 80s, 90s, that it just starts to be a word of mouth. This is what's called viral in the best sense of the word, in the way you want something to go viral. And this is not a new thing. Being a viral sensation is not a new thing. There is no better advertising or marketing for anything. Never has been, never will be, than word of mouth marketing. A friend telling a friend telling a friend. And so if you have 10 OGs who are telling their 10 OGs, who are then telling their 10 OGs, guaranteed you are going to be a bestseller. Just guaranteed. So really start to create your creative crew around you, your OGs around you now. It saves so much work down the line in your editing, in your marketing, in your choosing what is the best book cover. I'll give you a little teaser here. For example, a little behind the scenes view. My book, Go Write Your Damn Book Already, it has little post-it notes sticking out of it, which are messages from my daughter. You know, usually, good job, I love this part. Sometimes, well, why'd you write that? my editor-in-chief. Before this book came out, I wanted to do some marketing for it. And so I put a picture of the book cover on social media to ask people their opinion. Now I want to tell you a little secret, how to market this. I created the book cover and printed it up. And then I took the book cover and I wrapped it around one of my favorite books to make it look like it's my book. So I could take a picture of it and say, my book's coming out, before I actually had book in hand. You want to get people excited about what it is that you're writing. You want them in on the journey with you. My daughter and I actually did that for our book, The Search for Maya. We wrapped it around, and then we made a Facebook Live where my daughter was very excited to show everyone that the book cover was a facade and it's just around Diary of a Wimpy Kid, not a stinky kid. I don't know which is worse though. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So it's just one way to get people engaged. So that's what we're here to do. Today, we have actually a unique opportunity to actually message map or get a beat sheet or figure out how it is that we're going to framework a book, and every single book follows the same framework. We talked a little bit about the outlining in the last week of nonfiction, prescriptive nonfiction, teaching memoir, or narrative memoir. But nonetheless, there is still a way that we need to frame a book that is consistent with all of them, with all three types of outlines. In addition, because we're here talking about publishing, we also have to talk about this dreaded word that creatives don't really like, marketing. But let's reframe that. I prefer, instead of talking about marketing, it's promoting to the market. So just think of that. It's just going to the market. If you're going to buy a rug, you're going to go to the rug market. If you're going to go buy fruit, you're going to the fruit market. Here, we're actually just going to the book market. So we're not marketing, it's not a verb, we're promoting to the book market. When we promote to the book market, we have the same container in a microcosm that a book is in the macrocosm. And if that doesn't make a lot of sense, it will in just a few minutes. Every time you write, you are actually writing contents that can be used as a blog, as an article, as a video, as an onstage talk, as a radio talk or a podcast. It always follows the exact same map, the same messaging, no matter which medium you're on. A book is just a collection, a bank of all of those stories put together. Individually, all of those stories are standalone by themselves and can be published. And you really want to start publishing all of those stories now. And I don't know at what point of the journey you are in your publishing journey, whether you're 6 days out from publishing your book, 6 weeks out from publishing your book, or 6 years out from publishing your book. There is no better time to start than now. So with that, we're going to actually look at the SWIFT model. And if you remember in the storytelling session, we talked about that every good article, blog post, podcast episode, speech from a stage, anything, from now on, I'm just going to say chapter. Because in essence, each of those is just a chapter. And we're going to actually map that out here on this whiteboard. It actually is segmented into 18 different squares. We're going to look at a book in this sense that's going to have 3 acts. The first act, the second act, and the third act. But within each of those, it will have 6 chapters. You can choose for your book to have any number of chapters, small chapters, big chapters. That being said, the human brain works very well in segments of 3, 5, or 7. We can say that you can go on to 9, 11, but really every book is organized as a 3-act book or a 5-act book or at most a 7-act book. And really most of the time, pick up any one of the books that you have read and loved. And it is, if it has 7 acts, it's 5 equal parts and an intro and then an epilogue, or a prologue and an epilogue. For instance, one of my favorite books, Becoming by Michelle Obama, is organized into 3 distinct acts: Becoming Me, Becoming Us, and Becoming More. 3 acts. It also has a preface and an epilogue. So therefore it's really segmented into 5, but the storytelling is 3. That being said, that doesn't mean that those acts don't have many chapters within them. They have many chapters as well as they have many sub-chapters. So now there's no right amount of chapters for you to have per act, but there is a distinction moving between one distinct idea, a second distinct idea, and a third distinct idea. So today we're going to just work on 3 acts. We're not going to go on preface or epilogue. 3 acts. As we're writing this, we're going to look at each one of these chapters being its own topic. And as I said before, when I say chapters, I also mean that could mean it's a speech, podcast episode, video, any other medium. But from now on, I'm just going to use chapters. Each chapter has SWIFT model incorporated in it. Narrative fiction, teaching memoir, nonfiction, like prescriptive nonfiction, it doesn't matter. All of them, each chapter incorporates these, some to a lesser degree, some to a greater degree. Let's go into that. Story and wisdom is the beginning of Swift model. Now, it kind of goes without saying that every chapter or article submission or podcast, video, anything has a story to it. As we've always heard, facts tell, stories sell. Stories resonate with our heart. People attach to them. You can tell them a whole bunch of stuff and they will walk away saying, you know what that person said? Well, their story is really interesting. And it's the story that they'll repeat afterwards. That's how you get the OGs, the original game changers, to be raving fans. Tell them stories. Now, what do I mean by wisdom? Well, every story, every great story has a moral of the story. It can also be said in the way you've heard me say the premise and the promise. So the premise of the story could be the boy who cried wolf. It's a story about a young boy who always lied to the villagers until the villagers didn't believe him anymore when the wolf really came. The moral of the story is don't lie, people won't believe you. That's story and wisdom together. If you think of every single story you've ever heard before, there's a story and a wisdom. That has to be in every one of your chapters. Every one of your chapters. If there's a story in your chapter, it has to have some wisdom attached to it. Sometimes it can be explicit, very obvious. Sometimes it can be hidden and underwoven. Sometimes it can be an open loop to explain the wisdom a little bit later, but there has to be a seed of wisdom in every single story that you tell. And it could be also interchangeable. You can start with the wisdom at the beginning of the chapter to open it up. For instance, if you say, did you know that lobsters stay in their lobster shell until they've outgrown them? That's already given a moral. And then you can move into, I learned this. The very first time I learned this was by going to listen to this great spiritual teacher who talked about growth being uncomfortable. And he anchored it by talking to me about the lobster staying in their shell until it's outgrown it. So there could be a little mystery with the wisdom, but story and wisdom in every single story, in every chapter. Then you've got the I, which is information. Information can be anything from a relevant fact, statistic, data, a quote by somebody else, for instance, a historical significance, any kind of information. There has to be some information woven into that story, even if it's a fiction story. I learned how lightning strikes, that it doesn't actually strike from the sky. It comes up from the electricity from the ground, from a fiction book I read when I was a child. There has to be some information woven into your stories. People, as much as they love what we'll call the right brain hemisphere or stories that connect our heart, they also love to be taken and shown something that they didn't know before, or to have their left brain or their logical mind expanded or challenged. So there has to be a little bit of information woven in there. Then you've got the F, which is formula. It can also mean framework. Now, what I mean by formula, I'll start with that one. Formula is when you start to put your own mark on what it is that you're talking about. And that has to be woven into every single story. A formula is E equals MC squared. We all know the first person we think of when we hear that formula, of course, is Einstein. We all know that. Then we can start to understand the theory of relativity, the wisdom. And the question is, do you source the information, book, article, you get the information? That really all depends. In a narrative memoir or a fiction novel, you wouldn't, simply because it would slow the flow of the storytelling. Definitely in a prescriptive nonfiction, you could put a little asterisk or a little number and have it referenced at the back. But if it's just information such as, a formula, if it's just formula such as common knowledge, E = mc squared, of course you don't need to source that. But I'm talking more so here, formula, your own formula. Your own formula. And your own formula then becomes, I call it, you can call it, if your name is Sam, it could be a Samism. I call mine Emisms. Every author I work with, I always have them write their own isms, and they're the things that they always say, that they just ask your friends what it is you always say. Guaranteed, there's something that's unique to you, and that's your formula. And you have to add those in. Find those things that you always say, or that you have created an anagram from, or that you can find a way of adding in a little bit of flavor that is unique to you. Within that, the F, there's also framework. Now, let me use, once again, Michelle Obama's fantastic book to show this. Let me once again find the table of contents. The book is called Becoming. Becoming. Act 1 is becoming me. Act 2 is becoming us. Act 3 is becoming more. Do you see the framework? It is very clear that all we will find in Act 1 are stories about her own upbringing, becoming me. The framework already indicates the flow of how we're going to map out this book. She created a frame, becoming me. Now, it happens to be that Michelle Obama's book is a memoir, of course. So we can clearly say that any story that she's going to put in this framework of becoming me, so for us, it's in the first 6 chapters of Act 1, as an example, is obviously going to be, they're obviously going to be sourced from stories she has until the time she's, let's say, 18 or 20, or whatever cutoff she had for herself in becoming me, whatever she considered would be the cutoff. Those are the stories she put in there. She did not add becoming us or becoming more stories into becoming me. There's a framework for this. Becoming us. I think you can probably figure out what becoming us is for Michelle Obama. And whether she identified for herself that those are only stories that she would choose until the race for presidency, becoming more, then really indicates what it is that she's writing in that act. So in this case, this is her framework. I should really give her homage. In this case, this is her framework. Other books might be written in a different sort of a framework. Very, very often, there are books that are written into a framework that is an anagram for something. So, the 4 agreements. What is the framework? Agreement 1, Agreement 2, Agreement 3, and Agreement 4. A book about the chakras follows through. A book that might choose to have to be called something that is an anagram for something very clearly follows that framework. So if that makes sense, great. Then we get into the T, which is tools, techniques, or takeaway. Yeah, for you said timeline for the T, or for the framework. Framework could be exactly, I see what you're saying. Timeline, so it could be exactly the early years, the middle years, the later years. It could be before the storm, after the storm. Exactly. So and that's actually a great framework for a book, or for an article or chapter. Remember, I'm saying every time I'm saying book, I mean that's the macrocosm. We also have an article also has that in smaller, before, middle, and after.
Does the framework come first, or if you're already writing in a story and you have to go back and put it into a framework? I mean, how does that work if the story is coming out of you before you can frame it?
Beautiful question. I'm so appreciative that you asked that, because there actually isn't a right way. Remember, we're Write Club. There are no, there isn't. You can't make a mistake in Write Club. There are no rules in Write Club. There's nothing you can do wrong. And in a moment, when we get into framing it or mapping it out, doing our beat sheet, you'll be able to sort of see how that becomes very fluid. And so we'll actually see real time how this becomes fluid. So and thank you also for just unmuting and asking. This is, as we get into the collaborative creative crew part, we're going to need that. So the last is tools and techniques. I will also say, if you're looking to do something more of a narrative, memoir, or a novel, change that T to be takeaways. Every time you write, there has to be a takeaway for the reader. Remember, we're writing for them. So the takeaway can also relate to the wisdom, the moral of the story. It's a great way to also bookend the narrative. Tools, techniques. If you're writing a prescriptive nonfiction, for instance, then you should definitely put a technique. If you're doing a book on breath work, then every chapter should end with a different breathwork technique. If you're writing a book about dieting, then every chapter should have a tool, a specific tool that you use. If it's a narrative, memoir, or novel, then a takeaway in each chapter. You have to look for the takeaways in the chapter. And I wrote here SAGE because these tools, the techniques, the takeaways, even if they're under the radar, implied, if they're not, you're not beating someone over the head with a takeaway like learn this. No, it's an invitation to take something away from it. It has to be sage. And I love this anagram SAGE because it's like sage advice. Sage advice. Short, actionable, goal-oriented, and easy. I'll repeat. Short, actionable, goal-oriented, and easy. It has to be sage. Guess what I just did there? When you walk away from this lesson tonight, you are going to remember that your tools and techniques have to be sage, because I just gave you a formula. The formula is short, actionable, goal-oriented, and easy. It's a way to have your readers really anchor with what it is that you're saying. They'll walk away with the story and retell the story, and then they'll say, and I'll never forget SAGE. I'll never forget E = MC squared. I'll never forget becoming me, becoming us, becoming more. These are the things that anchor your readers' brains, and without them, you're forgettable. With them, you're unforgettable, and you've got a raving fan culture. you've got your OGs. So when I'm saying marketing, I'm not saying running ads or putting together billboards or having commercials. Marketing actually gets embedded into each of your chapters because people are now your word of mouth promoters. You are in the book market. Like if you were in the spice market, you are the vendor with the most flavorful, aromatic, beautifully colored spices. And everyone walking through that bazaar wants to come to you. That's how we're building the book. Ready? Does everyone feel ready with that? We're going to do this now. We're going to do this. And now I'm going to give a caveat. I'm old school. I like pen and paper. That doesn't mean I'm the only that you have to do it this way. If you want to do it on a big Post-it note like this, when I'm writing a book, I've got the whole wall covered with these. If you want to do it that you have an accordion file, lots of authors do that, old school. They put little notes in an accordion file. Each of the slots in the accordion files has a different label on it. If you want to do it on your computer, there are lots of great apps and programs for mind mapping on the computer. There is no right way, right? There are no rules to Write Club. There's no right or wrong way. Today, we're going to do it like this because it's very visual. And here's our little magic trick. We've got Post-it notes. Because I do it this way, and again, find your own way that's most comfortable for you. But when I'm writing a book, I have these everywhere. I buy a stock of these. Some go in my purse, some go in my car, some go by my bedside table, some go by my shower. And I assign a different color to each of these. And today we can even do it, and you can unmute yourself to start. What color do you think story should get? Just shout out the answer. What color should story get between? We've got orange, pink, blue, green, and yellow. What color should story get? Pink for story. Okay, pink for story. What color should wisdom get?
Yellow.
Yellow. Yellow. You call it yellow, mellow yellow. What color should information get? We've got blue, green, and orange left. Blue for information. Blue for information. What color should formula and framework get? Orange or green?
Formula, orange.
Orange. Okay, I'm going to put it on this side of it just so we can still see. And then we've got green. So obviously tools, techniques, and takeaways. Our sage advice gets green. Awesome. So now we're going to start our 3-act story. Now, as we can imagine, we can't get everyone's story, and I don't want to choose a single person because one person may not want to share their full story, and also that's not fair to the rest of us. So we are actually, as a crew, as if we're a many-headed storyteller, we're going to actually create a story now, a book now. And so instead of it being a memoir or narrative fiction, we're actually going to create a story or a book, I should say. Now, there are always 3 essential themes that humanity keeps going for. And I'm not promoting one or the other, but people always want more love, more money, or they want, I want to say to be healthy, but let's face it, people want, the diet industry is crazy. So diet, fitness, that kind of thing, which of course we will interpret however we want, but that's your choices. Are we talking about love, money, or health? And it doesn't mean that you are aligning with that. We're just going to choose as a collective just to showcase how easy this is to write.
I vote for love.
So just shout it out. Didn't hear. Sorry?
I vote for love.
I do too.
Did I hear love?
Love?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a rounding success. I wore red. It's like we're in this for love. We're in it for love. We're in it for love. We're going to call our book very simply how to find love. My internet is telling me that I'm unstable. So in the case that I get on, how does my internet know my stability? Oh, it's the internet is unstable. Oh, that's different. I'll forgive her. So we're going to talk about how to find love. Overreaching topic. I know if we were really here doing a one-on-one session, I would highly, highly recommend that you find a niche for that. How to find love. Actually, let's do this. Let's do this. How to find love after 40. Let's do it. New life love. Second chances, right? Everyone good with that? So it's not how to find love, in high school or sweetheart, in kindergarten or school or in college. We're talking about how to find love after 40. Okay. So with that, everyone, please contribute. What do you think the perfect Act 1 will be in this book called How to Find Love After 40? Any suggestions? How to Find Love After 40? What is Act 1?
Maybe what you learned up until the point of when you're 40 about love.
Right. That makes sense, right? Does everyone agree with that? Right? So let's call it, can we call it something like pre-40 or under 40? Does that make sense? Yeah, something like that, under 40. So what was formula? We're going to go orange. So I'm just going to write under 40 because we haven't yet established exactly whether it's we haven't established our formula yet, but I'm just going to put that in there. What would then the obvious second act of this How to Find Love After 40 book be?
Soul searching.
Soul searching. Does everyone agree? Yes? Are we in soul searching? Soul searching becomes our second act. Third act of How to Find Love After 40.
Loving yourself.
Loving yourself. Okay. Loving yourself. Now that we have that like that, we have our formula. We're going to talk about, the way that we're framing this is love before 40, soul searching, and loving yourself. Does that sequence resonate with anyone? Resonate with everyone, I should say? Does it resonate with everyone? Because we can change it. Because this is how it works. We can change it. Now, we may keep it as before 40, soul searching, loving yourself for now. We may see that we want to change it in a few minutes. We don't know. If there's something that we could find before 40, soul searching and loving yourself. And I mean, you guys are giving me these ideas as we're like on the move here. So it's not like I have an idea of this beforehand, but can we think that possibly there's something that in before 40, soul searching and loving yourself, did we get to that solution? Could we have gotten to the solution of loving yourself before 40?
Yes.
We could have, yeah? Could we have gotten soul searching before 40?
Yes.
Could we have gotten like all of those before 40, but in order to tell about them, we have to tell the stories that we gave before we were 40, in this case, for instance. Right? In this case, we have to tell so sort of like a before, during, and after. I would actually say, I'm going to, instead of calling this pre or under 40, before. So I'm just going to change that. Okay.
Because my brain sort of goes to the qualities. and then how
Yeah.
you view it. Like the perspective is different, but the qualities are the same.
I love that. So there, I love that, because this is how we're writing this book, as a many-headed mind, because you just took the framework a little bit different, a little bit deeper, let's say, a little bit deeper. In the framework, can we think of 6 qualities that we were looking for before 40? Like when you say qualities, shootouts, what are some of the qualities? What are some of the qualities that you would have looked for before 40?
Well, I think the qualities sort of span across the ages, but your perspective in looking for them. So like the loyalty, kindness, generosity of spirit, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. So there's loyalty, kindness. Anyone else can think of other qualities?
Someone to save you.
Okay. I'm just finishing up generosity. Don't mind my writing. I'm writing fast. Someone to save you. Okay.
Want to take care of you. Or maybe that's the same. I don't know. A bit different.
It's
Okay.
there is nothing wrong in
Yeah.
Right Club.
Yeah.
We're okay. So we've got loyalty, kindness, generosity, save you, take care of you. But let's just one more quality that you would look for in love before 40.
Money.
Money. Okay. Now you see how quickly we
Sex
just
appeal.
did that? Okay. You know what? I'm going to add sex and money together in one chapter. Not that they're the same thing, and not that you should trade sex for money. Please don't get the, I'm not going to be in violation of any standards here. The reason I'm putting them together is because those are, we're talking about the before 40, and those might be things that are qualities that we may look for before 40 that are fleeting. Money comes, money goes, sex appeal comes, sex appeal goes. They're very much in the body, right? Like they're things that we may look for. But notice what we did that quickly. Now, these topics may not resonate with all of us because we're all different people, but just to show you how quickly we just built a framework. We now have Act 1, loyalty before 40, kindness before 40, generosity before 40, save you, someone to save you before 40, someone to take care of you before 40, and sex and money before 40. Can we see in this book that we've just framed as a before, during, and after, how you can now bring each one of these formulas into each one of those acts?
What just
How
popped into my
does-
brain was body, mind, and spirit.
Right. There's a framework right there.
Yeah.
There's a framework right there. I love that you just said that. Beautiful. I love that you just said that. So we have just created a frame for this book. I could rewrite all these orange stickies right throughout each one of these chapters. And yes, we can look at it that before 40 body is very important to us. So loyalty, under 40, loyalty might mean a very different thing. Like as a 20-year-old, loyalty might mean not going out with your friends, but go out with me. As a 50-year-old, loyalty might mean go out with your friends, please. Go on vacation. Just don't cheat on me. Loyalty as a mind, body, and spirit might be you can have your little romp in the sack with whoever you want. I'm not condoning them, but I'm just saying it might be, right? Loyalty in a body, mind, and spirit, or in a before, during, and after might mean a very different thing. So you have now got topics for each one of those chapters in the framework. Now, if you can find a way for that to be kind of like what you said, mind, body, and spirit, a natural progression, if you can find a way for this to be an anagram, if you can find a way for this to be becoming me, becoming us, and becoming more, something that's memorable, all the more powerful. Anchor things in. But we have just created 3 acts. Okay? Now it becomes a little bit more personal. For each one of these frameworks, formulas, we're going to find a story. We're going to find a story for each one of these chapters. So now we have in this chapter, before 40, or the before, with loyalty. Now this might be a story of my first crush. My first crush broke my heart. Little David Green. I used to chase him around the bushes in the schoolyard, and I wanted to kiss him. True story. I looked him up on Facebook. I'm trying to find him. If you know a David Green, I'm telling you, I want that. I want that kiss. I ran around the bushes. I ran around the bushes one time, and he was kissing a girl called Rachel. True story. True story.
How old were you?
5. It was kindergarten.
Oh.
Now, what can we make of, like, what's the moral of that story? Right? What's the wisdom? We could choose. Don't try to kiss 5-year-old boys. Even if you're 5. We could choose. Don't chase after a boy. You know, because if you're the chaser, they're the runner. Rachel wasn't chasing him. Just saying, she was behind the bushes. We could choose the story of, like, don't date boys called David Green. Like, we can make any moral of this story, but we have to have a moral. So when we're building out our map, we can see, oops, chapter 1 of Act 1 doesn't have a moral yet. I'm going to give it a moral. Don't date Davids. Simple as that. Don't date Davids. That's the moral of the story. That's the wisdom. Oops, not really such a sticky one. Funny, don't date Davids doesn't want to stick. I guess it's because it's a ridiculous wisdom. It just fell down. But we can know that was there. Some information. Well, you did kind of get some information from me. I was in kindergarten. That's some information. The boy's name was David Green. That's some information. Does it deepen it a little bit? Just a little bit. That when I was in kindergarten, I grew up in Leeds, and I went to, as is the custom in England, a school that you had to wear costume, that you had to wear uniforms. And I won't mention the school's name because I don't want David Green to be associated and his wife to say, "Oh, you kissed Rachel." But if I would say that the school was called Hogwarts, and we wore gray uniforms with a purple tie, would that be something that would anchor in your mind? So that's some information. More information than that is that the year was 1979. Okay, so I put information into that chapter. Formula we already did. Tools, techniques, or takeaways. It kind of wraps up with the wisdom that we gave at the beginning, for in this case with this takeaway. But sage advice in this case would be, if I were actually writing a book called How to Find Love After 40, I would add in something along the lines of, of course David ran away from me. Studies show that boys don't mature until at least the age of 25. And then maybe I would quote some sort of biological imperative of why the brain doesn't mature until the age of 25 and how you can't expect a 5-year-old to really be loyal, which is what this chapter is about. I would add some sort of tool or technique, some sort of sage advice to this. Something that is like actionable, something that is tangible for the reader in a case like this. And if that's the case, then I would actually look this up if I didn't have it readily on hand. I would research it so that I could put in the article. A study out of UCLA showed that the boys, prepubescent boys, don't have the maturation to focus on one thing. And I would put that study there in Act 1, Chapter 1. Oop. So now we can easily identify, I'm just going to get that yellow sticky, which sort of lost its stickiness. Let me try another one. So now I can easily identify that this chapter has all 5 of these elements. And I would go on to do that for every one of the chapters. And I can easily then identify what I'm missing in one of the chapters. So now if I have a study that for one of the chapters might look like, well, oh God, I just came across some information. It's really interesting. A friend of mine just told me that, 35% of people who have been in a marriage already divorce a second time. Where am I going to put that? I mean, obviously, we now have a framework. Does it go in the before 40? No, obviously not. Does it go in the during the dating process, the soul searching of dating after 40, looking for what it is that you want, knowing that 35%, this information, 35% of divorced people divorce a second time. Does that go in before dating, after 40, before dating 40, during the dating of 40, or after the loving yourself first? Right? Now you know that this piece of information goes somewhere in during. You write that study down, you write the number down, you write all the details down. You might even write where in your book, which page in your book you've got it sitting at right now. But you can always come with this information and move it somewhere else. Now you can attach a story to that. You might say, oh God, I remember my first date after my divorce. The guy showed up, and you give the story. And now you're starting to build out that chapter with all of the Swift model. Anyone have a story, for instance, that you'd put in the 3rd chapter, in the 3rd act, in Loving Yourself? Any ideas around a 3rd story? Loving yourself, like what would be the ideal story that comes with loving yourself? What's the promise of the book?
That you don't need somebody, but you want somebody, but you don't need them.
Right. How to find love. Yeah. So
how
exactly.
To be full on your own.
Right. So how to be full on your own. And ideally, if you are writing a book on how to find love after 40, ideally, you know what? I shouldn't say ideally. It can end with loving yourself. That's how I found love.
Like loyalty to yourself, kindness to yourself, generosity to yourself. Yeah.
100%. Save yourself. Take care of yourself. Sexy and money for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Do you see how we just brought that full circle? And then you're going to incorporate story after wisdom after wisdom in every one of these boxes.
But
you want to write this book now? Yeah. Well, this is how easy it is to write any book. you saw we chose this as a love book. We could have just as easily made this a diet book. We could have just as easily made this a money book. We could have just as easily made it any book, but we chose a love book. But it's this easy to write any book. Even my daughter and I, as you know, write fiction. We get, and literally, we are constantly moving these around here. Well, this doesn't make sense. This character didn't meet this character yet. So we've got to bring this one up here. And we're constantly moving these stories and these little anecdotes around because the brain doesn't work in a logical way. The brain comes out with these ideas in the shower, or in the car, or in bed. Oh my God, I've got this great story. And guaranteed, all of you tonight are going to come up with gems for this book, to contribute to this book. Every single one of you, because once you start the creative flows and the inspirational working, then you actually start to think of stories. You actually start to think of stories and wisdom and everything for that. So
one of the things that I'm thinking about, like I love books with the format of different points of view. So it might be the same timeline, but you get one sister and then the other sister. Or best friends, or whatever the dynamic might be.
Yeah, I love those as well. Yeah. I absolutely love those. When you have like 5 different viewpoints, point of views, POVs, like the father, the mother, the brother, the sister. Jodi Picoult does those really, really, really well. The judge, the plaintiff, right? Seeing things from both sides. The murderer and the murdered mother, right? Like seeing things from both sides. It's very, very strong. That, what you just mentioned, goes back to framework.
Yeah.
So if you were, for instance, to take a situation like that, where you're having the point of view of 2 different characters, let's just say 2 different characters, you will create one whole board like this. Or as I said, you could choose to do an accordion file or a paper or something online, doesn't matter. But let's say you choose to do the visual of one board like this for one of the characters, and a second board, the exact same thing for the second character. Because everything that goes on here has to be seen from the second character. So much like here we wrote loyalty, kindness, generosity, save you, take care, sex, and money. That's going to be repeated in the second act and third act. The exact same thing would be done to frame a book that had different POVs. Does that make sense? And that's a beautiful framework. I absolutely love that framework because it's sort of like, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, see it from their perspective. The exact same thing. There's a fire. Someone's running out, save my family. Someone's running in because they're a firefighter. 2 different points of view. 2 different premises, 2 different promises. Same situation. So just brilliant. Like, love that framework. Absolutely love that framework. So yeah, that is how you frame it. By the end of it, you have 5 sticky notes in each of these squares. You could have more information, if you want. 1 story, 1 wisdom. Again, as I said, there is no rule into how many chapters you have in a book. As I said, the overall framing, 3, 5, and 7 really is how the brain loves to operate. But within those 3, it can have as many chapters as you want, as many stories and wisdom, as many Swift models as you want within each chapter. You could have small chapters, big chapters, whatever you choose. And here is where you put the pedal to the metal, or the rubber meets the road. You can now take each one of these chapters and publish them as a singular unit. You pull it out and you publish it on your blog, or you speak about it on a stage, or you create a video around just that snapshot. Because each one of these has all of the criteria for good storytelling within each one. Make sense? And with that, I am going to sign off because this is now up to you to frame for your book. So now try to frame your book 3, 5, or 7. If you can think of an anagram, all the better. That keeps you on with, a beat sheet. You now know what you're looking for. It's kind of like jazz musicians. They know what the set is for the night. They know which songs they'll be playing. They know the notes within that song. And as long as they're keeping that harmony, which is what we've done here, they've kept keeping a harmony. Now they can start scatting and riffing and having a lot of creativity. And the creativity actually comes to them because they've pulled it in. The creativity will come to you when you map this out like this. You are going to be in the shower and suddenly go, oh, I've got a story for that. Oh, gosh, there's this wisdom I learned. I better find a story for that. And it will come to you. You are magnetizing it. You're drawing it in. So have fun with your map, with your message map. And I'll see you again in the next session. As always, write on. Bye. See you next time.